Hello, I'm Dani Colman, and I am the author and co-creator of The Unfinished Corner, a middle grade Jewish fantasy adventure coming this fall from Wonderbound, the middle grade and young adult imprint from the Vault Comics. The Unfinished Corner follows the story of four preteen Jewish kids who are abducted from a school trip by one of their teachers who turns out to be a rogue angel. And what this angel wants of them is to take them to the corner of the universe that God left unfinished and complete it so as to drive out all of the evil that has hidden there for so many generations. So it's a sad but undeniable fact that whenever there is a period of upheaval or unrest, there is a corresponding rise in anti-Semitism. This is something that's been studied over years, over decades. It seems to be a long 5,000-year-old global tradition that when something goes wrong, someone's going to blame the Jews. Now, as of right now, we have seen a lot of unrest over the past few years, from crazy local politics to globally upsetting events, rising income inequality, the climate crisis. The list goes on and on and on and on. And with every event that has shaken up the status quo, that has caused unrest, discomfort, and fear, we have seen this corresponding rise, the expected rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes, not just in the US, but all over the world. What this means is that, especially with how tumultuous the last few years have been, there are Jewish kids 6, 8, 12, 15 years old, who have grown up in this climate of being blamed for everything. There really hasn't been a period for quite some time that has been quiet enough that as a Jewish person you can walk through the world and not find someone explicitly blaming you for the world's ills. And I think as a kid, that's got to be really tough. I remember growing up and seeing reports of anti-Semitism, seeing even anti-Semitic protesters outside the local Jewish school, and feeling that fear and that discomfort and wondering what I was getting myself into, what I'd been born into. Now, as an adult, I can look at my religion, I can look at my community and my culture and its history and appreciate its richness, appreciate everything that it's given to me and all of the joy that I can find in it. But certainly when I was younger, that could be very, very difficult. And I know that there are Jewish kids walking through the world today having that same experience of wondering why this is happening, why people view them this way, and whether it's ever going to stop. And if not, is it worth it? So first and foremost, The Unfinished Corner, it's not going to solve anti-Semitism. I wish that I had the magic recipe for that. I do. I would give it out for free, and we'd be in a much better place. But absent that, what I wanted to bring into the world is a story, a book, an adventure in which Jewish kids and Jewish things are cool. They're exciting, they're imaginative, they're wild and off the wall, and they're an adventure. They're with these characters, with these pieces of Jewish mythology, these amazing folk tales. I want to take Jewish kids on an adventure that will allow them for a moment to forget what's going on in the real world and think of themselves as cool heroes. Because when you're part of a group that is persecuted, that is hated, that is demeaned for no reason, I think there's no better solution to that. There's no better boost to your confidence and your morale to see yourself as the hero in a story, to see yourself winning fights, both physical and psychological, to see yourself overcoming seemingly impossible odds and triumphing in the end. So I really, really want Jewish kids growing up in this time that is so unsettling and so full of blame to be able to pick up this book and go on an adventure in which they can see themselves as the undisputed heroes, and not just by getting to the end of the story and winning the day, but by doing so through a connection to Judaism, through understanding and learning about the history, the tradition, the scripture, the stories, and all of the generations of Jews and Jewish heroes who came before them. I also wrote this book with non-Jewish kids in mind. It's written to be as accessible as possible to non-Jews. And the reason for that is that you've got Jewish kids growing up in this climate of hate and blame, and that's terrifying. But then you have non-Jewish kids who, on some level, have to be absorbing that, have to be picking up this idea that is so ingrained globally that Jews can be blamed for what goes wrong. And that's equally as frightening to think about, that there are children growing up learning to hate and learning to blame through no fault of their own, just through what they're exposed to, through what goes on in the world day after day. And to my mind, there's no better antidote to that, no better barrier against growing up into hate than storytelling, than the power of narrative, and the momentum, the forward motion of a story, this desire to know what happens next, to help you push away biases and learned hatred in the interest of going on a journey with characters that you love. And it's not about getting up on a soapbox and explaining all the ways in which Judaism is cool. That hopefully comes across in the telling of the story itself and in the adventures that these children go on. No, it's about telling a story in which the excitement and the adventure are so palpable that no matter what background you come from, and no matter what you've been taught to believe about other people, you still want to get into adventures, get into fights, solve puzzles with these characters, and write this story with them all the way to the end. Storytelling is such a powerful force for empathy. We as human beings are neurologically hardwired to tell stories and to empathize with the storyteller when a story is being told. And so I want this book to be my contribution to creating greater empathy and greater understanding by inviting readers of all denominations, of all faiths, of all backgrounds to come on an adventure and see where it goes. I grew up in northwest London, in a very sort of traditional middle-class suburban family. Mother, father, 2.7 children. I'll leave it to my siblings to figure out which of them is the 0.7. And I had the great fortune to grow up in an extremely diverse and colourful part of London, where just on the street that I grew up, we had 2 Jewish families, a couple of Hindu families, a family from Trinidad, at least one Asian family, and, you know, a few streets over you had just every colour, creed, and origin under the sun. It was a wonderful place to grow up in an open-minded way, And that was something that my parents certainly were very, very insistent on, that I interact with people who are not like myself as often as possible. And not just interact, but learn and be curious and participate as much as possible. So we were involved in a lot of interfaith efforts growing up. We would host seders and other Jewish events to which we would invite non-Jewish friends so that they could learn and get involved if they wanted to. Our community would throw events such as Indian dance nights and Diwali parades, Ramadan meals for the Muslim community, and we got very, very involved, and as much as possible try to be part of this amazing melting pot of cultures that existed where I grew up. So I grew up in a very creative family. I played the violin, I wrote stories, I was in various musical groups, my younger siblings as well played the piano and cello respectively, and it was a very vibrant upbringing where we were encouraged to explore and play, but also to sort of try hard at things. We didn't do something if it wasn't worth doing properly. So when we played chess, we played competitively. When we played tennis, we took it seriously. And that, I think, contributed to a real culture and a real sort of habit of wanting to explore and wanting to be creative and wanting to see and experience everything that the world had to offer. So when I was 18 years old, I decided that I was done with the UK and went to film school in Colorado, where I studied for a couple of years, worked on some uncredited script rewrites, was on the crew for a handful of short films and web series, and ultimately decided that the film industry was not for me. It's a very, very difficult industry for a number of reasons. But over the course of my filmmaking studies, I came to meet members of the comic book community. So for the past 8-9 years or so, I've been in the comic book industry, working mostly behind the scenes in editorial. If you read Image Comics, you may have seen my essay work in books like Odyssey, Blackjack Ketchum, and Fair Lady. I've also contributed to anthologies such as Femme Magnifique and You Died, and The Unfinished Corner is my debut original graphic novel. It'll be the first large-scale comic work that I'm putting out into the world under my own name. So that's been my journey from there to here, and I'm very, very excited to see how The Unfinished Corner is received when it goes out to the world this October. Thank you so much for listening and for your interest in The Unfinished Corner. I cannot wait for you to have a chance to experience it when it comes out this fall, and to have a chance to share it with children and excited readers of all ages. Again, thank you so much, and I can't wait for The Unfinished Corner to be out in the world.